Metroid Return of Samus is the successor to the NES classic Metroid. The game was released in 1991 for North America, and at 1992 for the rest of the world. This adventure takes Samus to the small screen on the portable game console, known as the Game Boy. I will be comparing it to the NES classic Metroid a lot, since comparing it to the new game is not fair, so we'll see how much it improves on the quality of life compared to the first game. So right off the bat, you start your game on the surface of planet SR388, and you'll notice something. Samus is huge compared to the rest of the screen, which is rather small, making it hard to see far off to the distance. It could be jarring at first, but you eventually get used to it, as it usually isn't that much of an issue, until you lay too many bombs, and then you went off screen with it. It's really annoying that your bomb just despawned out of nowhere. Samus can now crouch compared to the first game, which is simply amazing. She's also a bit floaty in terms of how she walks and how she jumps, but for some reason, she feels really good to control. The gravity feels just right, maybe because of Super Smash conditioning us to make this game feel so good. Fighting normal monsters in this game is so much easier as well now. Your regular beam isn't a pixel size anymore compared to the first game, and enemies are actually pretty big themselves, meaning they have a bigger hitbox and a bigger hurtbox. Once again, crouching is a thing, so now you can actually hit the enemy below shoulder height. Yay! Samus can also aim downwards as well while in the air, giving you a different angle to defeat enemies that are perhaps too hard to hit. The game makes hitting enemies so much easier now, and even its upgrades are quality of life compared to your regular beam. You get the Ice Beam, which is thicker in size and frees the enemy, the Wave Beam, which goes up and down making it very hard to miss, Spazza Beam, which covers the high, mid, and low ground, perfect to make sure you hit everything, and then finally the Plasma Beam. Why is the Plasma Beam a thin noodle? I believe it has piercing effect purposes, but the rate of fire is so slow as well, so what's the point? Enemies that didn't have issues fighting before suddenly became 10 times harder because of how thin the Plasma Beam is. Truly, the Plasma Beam is the worst beam. The game also doesn't allow you to stack your beam upgrades. You only get one at a time, so you better make sure you get the Ice Beam at the end or else you are totally screwed. Granted, the Ice Beam is in a pretty obvious location, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue, but it's still a bit tedious. Thankfully, the other upgrades aside from the beams do retain. Series staples such as the high jump and the screw attacks makes a return, but they also added a new upgrade called the Spider Ball. Cool upgrade. Yes, indeed truly exquisite. Too bad the game doesn't tell you how to use it. I'm stuck for a while trying to figure out how to use this cursed thing, pressing every button in existence, only to find out that you press down a third time in order to activate the Wall Cling ability. It will be nice if the game told you that, because I was getting out of the location with Bomb Jump instead. Yes, the Bomb Jump. This is the game that introduced advanced mechanics to Metroid, but don't expect to sequence break too much because you see, in order to progress, you need to clear a certain amount of Metroids in the labyrinth before new areas open up. Worst part is that you don't know which area would open up, or at least I don't know since the game is black and white. Everything looks just about the same, so there will be a lot of backtracking. I'm probably just being lost a bit, having no clue which is where. There is no minimap to help you out either to identify where you are at, making the world traversal even harder. You can try to draw your own map, but I find it near impossible since all the rooms are in weird shapes and pathways. The camera limitation also comes into play here, as it limits you to a small space, making it very hard to gauge what's the size of each room. There are also no landmarks or set piece to make one area more recognizable than the other. I mean, there kinda is with the Metroid husks, but they are littered just about at every place where you can find a Metroid, so I don't think that's too helpful other than to mark down the Metroid's location. There are a total of 47 or 48 Metroids if you include the baby, a pivotal character to the future of the franchise. 39 of them are fought as bosses, and so that's essentially 38 repeated brain-dead boss fight. There are 6 stages of the Metroid growth. You'll fight Infant Metroids 8 times as regular enemies, the Alpha Metroid 15 times. They're all fought the same. They all just bum rush into you without a care in the world, and you'll have to unload your missiles at them until they are dead. 16 times for the Gamma Metroid. They'll bum rush into you, and you'll have to unload your missiles at them until they are dead. They occasionally do become invincible with this electricity discharge attack. The Zeta Metroid, they'll bum rush into you occasionally, spitting fireballs at you, and you'll have to unload your missiles at them until they are dead. The Omega Metroid? That's right. He'll bum rush into you and occasionally spit fireballs that split, and you'll have to unload your missiles at them until they are dead. Now I think this is just a limitation of the Game Boy, but they all do this thing where if they go off screen, they just kind of stuck in pandemonium, where they are unaffected by time or damage. They kind of just linger about until the majority of the body is back within the camera view. This happens a lot more than it should due to how extremely zoomed in the camera is. Metroid Queens seems interesting, but I just cheesed it by standing at the corner of the wall and spam missile. Sure, I got hit a few times, but it went down in no time. As you can see, all the bosses are very repetitive and grindy. It certainly doesn't help that there are 39 of these schmucks, but there is an interesting boss fight, believe it or not. The saving grace is the random arachnids that actually require a bit more strategy with the morph ball. That was pretty cool. Other than that, all the boss fights are pretty sleepfest content. It becomes such a chore just trying to look for these guys only to be greeted with the same fight and the same repetitive boss music. I'm bashing this game a little bit too much though. This is a game that was released back in 1991 on a hardware that was filled with limitation, and other than the hunt, I actually had a lot of fun with this game. The level designs are fun to traverse. There are a few variety of enemy that makes each encounter requiring a bit of thought, unlike the Metroid bosses, and the gameplay was really smooth. It's really too bad that this game is bogged down by the lack of quality of life features introduced later in the Metroid games, such as the minimap. If it weren't for these, this game could have become easily recommendable for those that are curious to play, but as it stands, with the remake of the 3DS known as Metroid Samus Returns, and the fan-made game that Nintendo doesn't want us to talk about, hush hush, AM2R, there's really no reason to play Return of Samus unless you are really into Metroid and want to have a taste of the franchise origin. So in the end of the day, I would not recommend anyone to play this game if they are new or long-time fans of the Metroidvania genre. I can't even really recommend this to Metroid fans, as there are better options out there. The only people I can recommend this game to are retro game enthusiasts and the people who want to try all Metroid games, but I'm not really recommending anything at this point, am I?